Let's talk about a new round of tapes from President Biden that have emerged over the past few days. Now, these tapes are pretty damning. These tapes look at his discussions with then President Poroshenko back in 2016, shortly after President Trump was elected. We'll get to that tape in a second, but we should provide some context here because this context led to an impeachment of President Trump. So the context is when President Biden, a number of years ago, these tapes came to light in 2020. I think OAN network, was the ones that broke the tapes initially. And of course, Poroshenko came out at the time and said, these are Russian fabrications. These aren't real tapes. This is Russia made these up. That's all been debunked now. Of course, it led to the impeachment. We know that these tapes are real and that the authentication of President Biden at the time was vice president speaking. This was before he was
right. So this is the timeline,
yeah,
right?
2016.
The timeline of the phone call that we are about to play for you happened in 2016 when there was a president-elect, Donald Trump, and the Obama administration was outgoing. So the Biden we hear from at the time is Vice President Joe Biden, who we now know, we at least all agree that Hunter Biden, his son, has business dealings of an oil and gas company in Ukraine called Burisma. Right. We know this now. This is part of the context of that call.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we now know this. This is undebatable.
This is now an agreed upon truth.
Right. For 2 years, Rachel Maddow told us this was Russian propaganda and it was all fake. Now we know that it's absolutely 100% accurate. So this first phone call I'm going to play from you, just to provide some context, is President Biden on with Poroshenko, where Biden asks him to fire the prosecutor in Ukraine who was looking into Hunter Biden and Burisma, specifically Burisma. Take a listen.
That there is a new government and a new prosecutor general. I am prepared to do a public signing of the commitment for the $1 billion.
So, yeah. Poroshenko then can be heard defending the prosecutor before saying he asked for his resignation. So in the second soundbite I'll play for you here, this is where Poroshenko says that he's going to ask his prosecutor to resign. But first he's like, there's no corruption here. This prosecutor is a good prosecutor. There's no corruption. He didn't do anything wrong. So I'm basically asking him to resign because you want me to, Vice President Biden, so we can get this loan approval money? Like, that's what I'm going to do? President and Vice President Biden is like, yeah, that's what you're going to do. And you're going to do it within a short amount of time, or you're not going to get this loan. Take a listen.
Congratulations on installing the new prosecutor general. It's going to be critical for him to work quickly to repair the damage Shokin did. And I'm a man of my word. And that now that the new prosecutor general is in place, we're ready to move forward in signing that new $1 billion loan guarantee.
Okay, so these were tapes that were released previously. You may have heard them before.
Right. Yes, you would have heard these before. But this all led to something really important, right? These discussions led to something because President Trump then...
So you may recall the phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky shortly after his election to the presidency in Ukraine. President Trump called him. This is the phone call for which he was impeached in the House, right? The phone call in question mentions this prosecutor, right? This is President Trump saying, I heard you had a prosecutor who was very good and he was shut down and that was really unfair. A lot of people are talking about that. And he talks about how he would like to go into figuring this out.
Yeah, at the end here, you want me to read this? There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the attorney general would be great. Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me.
Now, the way this was framed, and I think it's only fair that I sort of disclose that I was one of those people who felt like this phone call was impeachable at the time. And now I have a little context and I feel a little duped about it, right? Whether these tapes are legitimate or not, it's interesting because of the way we are now seeing Hunter Biden as a legitimate actor inside Ukraine and the president working to protect his son.
This should be a lesson to all of us. This should be a lesson to all of us because, and I encourage all of you to go and watch Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate in an interview that they did at the Collision Conference where they talked about being duped by the Western media. What you just talked about is exactly right. What we were spoon-fed from CNN and MSNBC and most of the major media outlets all fell in lockstep.
Yes.
Laid it out as Russian propaganda, that Trump should be impeached, that there's nothing to see here. What are you doing calling all
Well,
of this?
because he says, can you do me a favor? And it acts, and so we were told that is asking for...
It's quid pro quo, right? You go look into this,
right,
and we will make sure
or
you get money.
asking for campaign contributions from a foreign government.
But this is exactly what Vice President Biden just did, right? In these tapes, he's saying, fire this prosecutor, or you're not going to get this $1 billion loan.
Yes.
Fire this prosecutor. Oh, you did it? Good. Now I'm going to do a public signing ceremony for you. But meanwhile, I want to...
So the new tapes that we have now take that conversation a little bit further, where President Biden says that he is mostly concerned that if there is more sort of, sort of stirring the pot, that President Trump will look into this prosecutor and that this can't happen.
Right. So we'll get to that new tape in a second. But I first want to go to the next tape, which is Biden confirming what President Trump had just said there is that I hear that he's out there bragging that he got this prosecutor fired. Like I hear that Vice President Biden was out there bragging that he got this prosecutor fired, right? To us, that sounds like crazy. Really? He did this thing on a secret tape and then he goes out on stage somewhere and he actually brags about forcing Poroshenko to fire a prosecutor, and he talks about being involved in that process.
But the way that he was framing it to us was that he was cleaning up corruption in Ukraine, right? Which he should, if this were true, if he really believed that there was corruption in Ukraine, he should recuse himself from anything that has to do with his close family ties.
Right.
If those things were true, which did not happen.
So let's listen to him bragging about this Poroshenko meeting. This is what President Trump was specifically talking about, the bragging. Watch.
Well, I was, not but it just happened to be, that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones. So I got Ukraine. And I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
He's basically bragging about forcing Poroshenko to fire the prosecutor. And he told him, you're not going to get this $1 billion. And look, you've only got a few hours left. I'm leaving. I'm flying out of Kiev. I'm flying out of here. And if you don't have this prosecutor fired, I'm leaving. And he did. He did get fired. So now the tape that emerged over the weekend, it's pretty hard to find, actually. And the audio is really low. I want to warn you. But this is, according to OAN, the release of this is President Biden speaking with Poroshenko in 2020 or in 2016, a week after President Trump was elected, and basically talking about where President Biden is, or Vice President Biden is basically threatening Poroshenko with physical harm if he asks Trump for more money. Like, don't do this. Do not ask Trump for more money, because Trump doesn't like to be asked for money. So if Trump's going to be asked for money, then he's going to start looking into things. And we don't want to stir up a hornet's nest, basically. Take a listen.
This is getting very, very close. What I don't want to have happen, I don't want Trump to get into the position where he thinks he's about to buy onto a policy where the financial system is going to collapse and he's going to we look to pour more money into Ukraine. That's how he'll think about it before he gets sophisticated enough to know the details. So anything you can do to push the Privat Bank to closure so that the IMF loan comes forward, I would respectfully suggest is critically important to your economic as well as physical security.
Okay.
To your physical security.
So there's a lot there. It's interesting. Like Clayton said, this audio is hard to find. The media has no appetite for this, right? They do not want to pin anything Ukraine related on President Biden because they want us to fall lockstep into accepting a war for Ukraine. They can sort of push this aside by saying, oh, it's OAN network, right? Which is known as like Trump propaganda, that, they say crazy things, so we don't have to pay attention to it. I feel like those are sort of dangerous sweeping under the rug that is very convenient for the dominant narrative.
Here's the Atlantic. Take a look at my laptop here, Philip. This is the Atlantic piece that chastised OAN after these tapes were released in 2020. Is OAN the leading edge of Russian misinformation? The Biden campaign says Trump's favorite TV network is peddling the Kremlin's lies. Right? And this piece goes through and like literally talks about the tapes and talks about if such recordings exist, they're likely linked to pro-Russian interests in Ukraine and a Russian intelligence operation. 2 former U.S. ambassadors to Ukraine and an ambassador to Russia told me.
Well, it is in Russia's interest to, that doesn't mean they created this news, right? But if the news is true, and that there is meddling inside the Ukrainian government far before this conflict came out, then that absolutely is a pro-Russian narrative, whether you like it or not, right?
Well, I guess in the way that we would be interested to know that, I don't know, Canada was being meddled with by Chinese interest or something else on our back door, right? Literally at our border, there would, I guess,
but just using that as a throwaway term, anything that's like, oh, that's pro-Russian, so we don't listen to it, right? Just because it might be good for somebody that we have collectively decided is an enemy doesn't make it false or not discernible.
Yeah. And then he goes on to say, this Atlantic piece, conspiracists have alleged that this was intended to help his son Hunter escape charges of corruption. But an audit by Ukraine's former top prosecutor released last week found no evidence of illegal activity. Oh, that's convenient. Right?
The new prosecutor.
The new prosecutor.
The prosecutor that the Biden family seemed to like didn't find that. That's interesting.
So when you think about that little quip, like that little dinky ass quip that President Trump made to Zelensky about having your attorney general look into this because it's interesting, led to impeachment.
An impeachment trial.
That
full blown.
Now think about it. Now think about, will we hear any discussion of impeachment for President Biden on this? Absolutely.
Or will we hear anything beyond just, OAN network, which people dismiss, or our YouTube channel? Right.
Where that's a conspiracy. Because if you try to dig for these tapes, good luck trying to find them. You won't see any mainstream media coverage of it. Try to flip to CNN. The employees over at CNN are crying because their ratings are so low. Maybe you should give them a chance tonight and flip over and see if they have primetime coverage of these these tapes. By the way, OAN actually said that they have over 5 hours of this stuff. And, of course, it was widely discredited. People were like, come on, no, they don't. This is fake. Poroshenko labeled it fake, on and on and on. And now my question is, like, why are we only hearing, in fairness, like, why aren't we only hearing about part of this now? Like, what else is there? Why are we waiting now to hear about this? Wasn't the veracity of it I don't know, but that's a good question, right? How much more is out there that we'll learn about? We're continuing to learn more about Hunter Biden. Go ahead, Philip.
Well, what I find is interesting is one, that Biden was involved in this at all, because if he doesn't talk about his business dealings with Hunter, then how did he even know that there was problems going on in Ukraine? And two, how the hell, name one other prosecutor the United States government has gone after anywhere. I've never heard of this happening. We don't, there's corrupt prosecution going on all over the world. We don't get involved in it. Why this one? then specifically. Like, if he's going to brag about like that he did it, brag about why.
Right.
Right.
That to me seems to be a missing piece here. Why it doesn't happen anywhere else?
Right. Yeah. And why was this like his decision? It wasn't really being pushed from the Obama administration. Like, this was more like a personal from what.
Well, the way he just framed it, he's like, I got Ukraine. So I was like, oh, Ukraine, right?
Like,
As if like he was dealt it in a hand of poker.
Right.
You know, Ukraine was given to me. I don't often say this, but I believe that's a lie. I do not believe that little bit for what you assigned yourself Ukraine.
Right. Yeah, of all
Like,
the ones that are
he
on the
got
table,
assigned
like
Ukraine.
Joe, which ones do you want? Let me see. I'll take Ukraine, I guess.
And
I
you
got
would
stuck with
hope that the Obama administration was a bit more competent than that and say, you have to recuse yourself of that one because your boy's involved there. Oh, yeah, okay, all right, I will do that, right? That's how it's supposed to go.
Right. Isn't your son involved?
So he should never have got Ukraine, if that is, in fact, a true statement, which I don't believe.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here.
He drew the short straw and just happened to get the one location on Earth that had the only corrupt prosecutor in existence. Like, that was just really
to do with
bad
his
luck.
child.
What's amazing
that's all because he wouldn't know about that.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk to him.
And I love that. So now we're okay with the corruption, right? The corruption was bad then, but now we're okay with the corruption, right? Because now we're going to give you now we're not just going to give you $1 billion. We're going to give you $70 billion. And we don't care that your government is corrupt. Heck, this weekend, Vladimir Zelensky just put on like administrative leave 2 people in his administration for potential corruption charges, right? But they're not fired. They're just put on leave while there's an investigation, I guess. Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in Europe, right? And so, you know, you have, again, and that's well known, right? That's one of 2 of the most corrupt countries.
Yeah.
Now we're fine giving you $70 billion.
Well, one of the things that Congress and the media told us that Trump should be impeached for that phone call to Zelensky was that he withheld aid in exchange for this investigation that he wanted, right? And I went back and I believed that at the time. I remember feeling like, yes, that is unconscionable. And I went back over the transcript today of that call. And the only way that he points out the United States gives you more aid than Germany. Germany talks a lot about Ukraine, but they don't give you stuff. It's us that gives you a lot of stuff. Just want to let you know that, right? That's what he says. And then later on, he says, do me a favor, though. He never actually makes it clear that he would withhold anything if he doesn't get this, do me a favor, though. And I guess that was a shock to me because, like I said, I'm willing to admit to you that there's egg on my face because I believed it at the time that was an impeachable call. And I couldn't find it as black and white as we have now. And that's shocking to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people saying they can't believe you believed that at the time. When you're, again, when you're spoon-fed this crap from the mainstream media, and it's forced down your throat a certain way. I never thought for a second that he would actually be removed from office. Like, I knew it was going to be a political witch hunt. And once Nancy Pelosi is involved in trying to distract, and pushing people in that direction, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Any chance they could get to make sure that Bill Clinton isn't one of the most recent presidents in memory to be impeached, like throw Trump into that as it was definitely a political witch hunt. But when you look at you want to compare like impeachable offenses now,
right,
like things to be impeached about, right? Like,
yes, but the media I consumed at the time convinced me, and I feel very differently about it now. I'm willing to say this.
Well, it's very big of you to say that. How many people here watching right now have ever been wrong or felt like they've been duped by the media? Let us know.
Or
in the
are
chat.
sad that you behaved a certain way or voted for something or anything like that.
All 9,000 of you watching right now have never, ever made a mistake or believed something or been duped by something, right? I mean, it's tough when you're weeding through this crap on a daily basis and you're looking and you're considering the sources, I mean, you're reading like an opinion piece in Politico and you're like, oh, this piece is brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I see. Oh, BP, British Petroleum. You mean they're the ones that funded this study? And like it, that's why it's a lot easier to just sort of sit there and where a lot of people do and just consume like this crap. Just flick on the clicker.
Right.
And sit there and don't actually consider the source and do the digging like our audience here does. That's why you're watching this show.
Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.